Welcome, everybody, to the Desert of the Real, the live Desert of the Real. Welcome, everybody, officially to AB Live on this Mercury Day, on this Odin Day. Although, as many researchers have shown, Odin or Wotan and Mercury and Hermes are one and the same. And regardless, I hope everybody's having a good evening. I had a great time today. Besides working, I went to about 30 miles to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and hung out with Steven Snyder, recluse. And while he's out doing occult and other hunting, he is a detective traveling the country, finding insights into the past of North America. We were able to meet up and had a really good time. But now I am having a great time here on Aeon Byte, and so happy to see everybody here as you gather into the chats, as you gather in front of your screens. And with us, I'm always very excited to have Bernie Taylor. His work is always outstanding and brings in so many great ideas together. As the Gnostics said, or as Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, how will you know the end if you do not know the beginning? We got to find out how we came about, how history came about, civilization, and human consciousness came about if we're ever going to understand where we're going or even where we are instead of sleepwalking into nuclear disaster as we seem to be so well. Bernie, thank you very much for coming on the show again. Always good to talk to you.
Miguel, thank you very much. I think this is my number fourth, or maybe number four, number five appearance. And the Moondog Vance, pleasure to have you with us as well.
How you doing,
Go
Bernie?
ahead.
Good to see you.
Doing good. So Vance usually brings in like the really insightful questions. So we're looking forward to some big ones tonight.
Yes,
I'll
he
do
is.
my best. My head's smaller tonight than it usually is, so I'm
Yeah,
not
it
sure how I'm
is.
going to do. Yeah, no, don't get me started on it. You ever bring up your computer and then all of a sudden Microsoft has rebooted it and people have changed all the versions and then nothing works?
Happens
Yeah.
with you, and especially when we used to do Skype interviews. As soon as you would start an interview, Skype would reboot on you or something. It was,
Yeah, well, it happened, but at least I got it up this far.
yeah, I think I'm lucky. I have my Windows set up. If there is an update, it's always at 4 in the morning. So for some reason,
Well, this one probably was. I was at work
it was
computer all day.
asleep. Yeah.
Yeah. But a new idea we could kick around maybe later on with the idea that consciousness is contagious,
Let's do it. I always like your ideas. That's for
almost like a
sure.
virus. Maybe we'll talk
Hmm.
about that later when we get to consciousness.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, let's do it. So awesome. Well, for those of you gathering in the chat rooms, as always, write your questions with as many question marks, haha, or on all caps, or of course, if you do a super chat, we appreciate your donations and your support, and we will get to you. Other than that, not a lot of housekeeping. Those of you who might not know, I will be traveling at the end of August. I'll be going back home to Portugal to visit family, to settle some legality stuff I need to do, and to do some copious amounts of hopefully ayahuasca in the Santo Daime Church. So I will hopefully have another Abraxas experience. Go to Sintra, see some UFO sites, Knights Templar Castle, maybe go to Spain. So shows will be a little bit different and a little bit. There'll be probably more live shows as once I'm in Portugal, recording there will be almost impossible because I won't have my equipment. But I am taking equipment that if we have to do a live show or anything like that, it will come out and that might happen. So anyway, just a warning if you're around the Lisbon area and want to hang out, let me know. Other than that, well, Bernie, how have you been? And tell us, give us a little preamble or prelude to this presentation.
Well, we've had three or four podcast sessions previously, and I think they all covered mountains. And so mountains are in us. As the question becomes how far back. And today, well, previous programs, the Upper Paleolithic cave art, the Ice Age art, was about 34,000 years ago. And today we're going to go 12 to 28,000 years ago. So we're connecting the 34 to what we would call the end of the Ice Age and the beginning of the Mesolithic / Neolithic, the world of Göbekli Tepe. So we're now connecting the distant past to what we would see as the recognizable past.
Very cool. And what was going on 12,000 years ago? A civilization was beginning. What was going on with humanity?
Sure, 12,000 years ago, cave art in Europe ends, completely ends. At the same time, places like Göbekli Tepe emerge. Okay, and at the same time, rock art in the Sahara, Western North Africa, emerges, whereas previously there was very little to none, I should say. And all of a sudden it explodes in the Sahara. So what happened 12,000 years ago is that there was climatic changes. Some people talk about comets. You've heard all the stories. But there are climatic changes, and it scattered people in different directions. Some people stayed where they were. Some people moved west. Some people moved south. And that's why we have this 12,000 years ago where we have these sudden shifts in what people are projecting. Göbekli Tepe, of course, the cave art leaves, and we find the emergence of major animal art in the Sahara. The Sahara is I mean, it's a huge area, of course, but it is the largest art museum in the world.
But 12,000 years ago, was it a desert? Because at one time it was fertile. It was green.
Yes, it was 12,000 years ago. It was definitely fertile.
Oh, wow.
And so the cave art there, the rock art in the desert is of alligators, hippopotami, or hippopotamuses, giraffes, alligators. And so we have actually it's alligators, crocodiles. So we have it's a different place in this today that we can find in the record. But that ends, most importantly, that ends when this presentation tonight completes in the timeline. So the question then becomes, how can we connect all that we see tonight to the present, to present peoples especially?
Yeah, that
in
is
both
true.
Turkey, Spain, and Africa.
Yeah, very interesting. So, a quick question before we get started. What do you see any spark that began quote unquote civilization, Göbekli Tepe, or any, I mean, what was behind? Of course, you can just say aliens and we just walk away and we don't have to take responsibility. What do you think started civilization? Climate and interaction?
Oh,
What are your
absolutely.
thoughts?
So the start of civilization, as I see it, is really 34 to 40,000 years ago.
Mhm.
And we look at Göbekli Tepe and people think it's amazing, but it's actually on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the high art form. And we could put the upper cave art at 9 and 10, and Göbekli Tepe is a 2 or 3. In terms of style, information held within the art, and so on. I mean, Göbekli Tepe is, you got big, pillars, but the art itself is, I mean, we're going to look at some stuff tonight. You can't compare it, not even on the same page. But still, the Göbekli Tepe and the other tepes they began somewhere. So I'm saying that that cosmic spark really was 34 to 40,000 years ago, when those people left Africa. And we're going to talk about some of the concepts. Actually, one major concept tonight, what was that spark? And it wasn't aliens or Bigfoot.
Or Bigfoot. Come on. You're in Portland. Bigfoot's a big celebrity in Portland.
Yeah, sort of. When you're Miguel, when you were here, you spent a lot of time in the downtown tourist shops. When
Yeah.
you head out of off the tourist strip, you don't see Bigfoot so much.
So Bigfoot is a metrosexual. I see.
Yeah, he's a metro.
He's a city guy.
He's definitely a metro phenomenon in the tourist part of town. I
Okay.
remember a few years ago. So cannabis became legal in Oregon, maybe like 3-4 years ago. And before that, there used to be a guy hanging around in the downtown area there that had the sign to legalize marijuana. and he's out there every day collecting donations, and he lost his job with cannabis, with the legalization. So cannabis
Oh, yeah.
kills jobs. Legalization of cannabis kills jobs.
That's funny. I know. I was thinking the other day. I was walking around and I felt like listening to the Bugles. Video killed the radio star,
Mm.
and now I'm thinking it's been the revenge. Radio's killing the video star because podcasting is like surpassing video, YouTube. It's the biggest medium right now in the world. More people are just consuming podcasts. So radio has come back with a vengeance right now for a while. So.
Yeah. Without question, if we call it radio.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, if we kinda. What do you think, Vance? Radio? Am I making an argument?
Photonio, since it's fiber optics.
So in the case of NPR, when they have their all things considered and these sort of things on Saturday and Sunday mornings, those are podcasts. Those are podcasts that became, iTunes.
Mhm.
But there's a new medium. My daughter's going to be a senior in college now. When she was a junior in high school, she took a communications class, and one of the assignments was to make a podcast episode. She came home and she explained to me. I was like, well, why would anybody listen to a podcast? And 6 months later, on my first podcast, and the night before, I bought a mic, and I bought it, and the camera was in the laptop, and I learned all about podcasting. That was the Den of Lore in a crash course. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh wow. Yeah, things have changed.
Well, it makes me think of Rupert Sheldrake, because it's like when a certain group of monkeys on the island learns a skill, all of a sudden all the other ones seem to imbibe in this field, this learning field. So podcasting probably had a certain number of people. This is like my contagious theory of consciousness, same kind of thing, right? So all of a sudden catches on.
Well, Rupert has kind of a variation of that. He thinks that if rats in one country in the United States or United Kingdom learn a trick, then rats in Australia will carry on that trick without any interaction. So he thinks it's like a cosmic consciousness where, everything is actually connected in that way. So he's still working on it. He's a bright guy, and I wish him the success. And if he does figure it out, he should get a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, it's not in the cards, so I don't think he's against the establishment, or the establishment's against him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he's
scientism and the materialist gang. Yeah, even though his work is sound, data driven, all that great work.
Well, he did a TED talk a few years ago, and he came out with bare feet.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I ever do a TED talk, I would do a homage, Sheldrake homage, come out without shoes at the very least.
Awesome. Well, you want to get started on the presentation, Bernie?
Absolutely.
All right, I will bring it up here. Let's see. There you go. We see it now, Bernie. Cosmic mountains in the sky, and take over.
Here we go. Cosmic mountains in the sky. Why do we climb mountains without apparent gain? Sing about their majestic peaks in our songs, and peer into the great beyond from their lofty summits. How far back in time could these connections have existed, or are they somehow part of our being human? In this presentation, Cosmic Mountains in the Sky, we will look into the Paleolithic mind that I believe to be our own, so as to examine these questions and perhaps find cosmic relationships with mountains that connect us all. First, thank you for giving the opportunity to present my work to your Aeon Byte audience. My name is Bernie Taylor, and my work explores mankind's creative and intellectual origins through Ice Age art. When we think about Ice Age art, mountains don't usually come to mind. One might recall artifacts such as these exquisitely engraved batons from Cantabria, Spain. And Cantabria is in the north of Spain. Oops, I'm sorry, I wasn't in line there. So this was the last one. This is the baton. Okay. Or cave paintings such as the Chamber of the Polychromes at Altamira. Some cave images are founded in pareidolia, that apparently unique ability in the human mind to find faces of people and other animals in geological formations, the clouds and constellations among the stars. Astronomy is founded in pareidolia. Without our pareidolia ability, we would be lost in the night sky. The Upper Paleolithic cave artists saw natural irregularities in these rocks at Altamira that had the impression of a horse, perhaps the horse head, and then dressed them up with black features. Pablo
Hey,
Picasso,
Bernie, let me interrupt real quick. On your screen, I see the bar. There's a bar with a blue button, the move screen or exit screen. Can you just move it out of the way? Yeah,
yeah,
move it like, yeah, there you go. Somewhere where that way we can see some of the text. All right, perfect.
okay, good. There we go. Pablo Picasso borrowed um, pareidolia-based images from Altamira to use in his 1907 Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Hang on a second. Used in his 1907 Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, that has been called the rupture moment in modern art. This imagery is consistent with the Spanish artist's quote, "It occurred to man to create his own images. It's because he discovered them in the world around him, almost formed or already within his grasp. He saw them in a bone, in the irregular surfaces of cavern walls, in a piece of wood. One form might suggest a woman, another a bison." I'm in agreement with Picasso that art was first found in our minds as we viewed natural objects and then projected our visions onto them. How could one not agree? He's Picasso. The Spanish artist recognized the source of the mask in Altamira that he reused in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, yet Picasso may not have considered other sources of pareidolia before we marked on bone, cavern walls, and pieces of wood. What if pareidolia was somehow observed away from these substrates and then projected into the lines found in them? To test this hypothesis, we must travel to another place in northern Spain to view the mountain Chindoki, whose peak is about 1,300 meters. My pronunciation of the Basque names in this presentation are not likely correct, but they are spelt correctly. Chindoki is sacred among the Basque people who have inhabited this region since at least the Neolithic. The origins of the Basque are an enigma, as their language is not connected to any other European language groups. The Basque believe that their mother nature deity Mari seasonally dwells in Marizolo, a cave on Chindoki. Marizolo literally means Mary's cave. One can see the climbing route to Marizolo with the cave marked by the blue arrow. This cave is on the other side of Chindoki that we viewed in the previous slide. Mary dwells in caves on two other sacred Basque mountains as well. While mountains in general are important to the Basque and are the foundation of their creation myth, Chindoki is one of the most important mountains in Basque culture. Cosmic mountains don't just emerge from the earth or ocean. These sacred peaks connect with the sky world. This image of Chindoki, as marked with the red arrow, was taken from the position indicated by the yellow arrow. The photographer had a westerly view of Chindoki. We return to this face of Chindoki shortly. We travel now to the El Pindal cave in nearby Asturias, Spain. From this cave entrance, one can view the Sea of Cantabria. A great deal has changed since the time of the Ice Age artists. The coastline was a few kilometers further out due to glaciation. There was also large megafauna, such as the giant woolly mammoths and straight-tusked elephants. Toothed hyenas and cave lions were real threats. Great herds of bison and oryx roamed, and fur clothing was more socially acceptable. What remains are the mountains, deep caves, and perhaps the minds of people. The current walking time between the El Pindal cave and Chindoki is about 55 hours, covering 262 kilometers. Google Maps uses 5 kilometers per hour to calculate walk times. In the El Pindal cave, there is the principal panel, which has red markings, engraved lines, and interesting natural irregularities. Most of the cave panels in this presentation were taken by the esteemed Japanese photographer Takeo Fukawa. They can be accessed from him at www.text9.co.jp. We can break the principal panel down into some of its elements and find recognizable natural features from Chindoki. Those features on both have the appearance of a straight-tusked elephant. with lowered tusks and trunk. The mountain is living in an animistic sense of the word. On the El Pindal cave wall, there's a rough feature in gold, as marked by the blue arrow. Let's go back. Actually, hang on. In gold, as marked by the blue arrow. Um, that appears to be a natural irregularity and possibly what drew the Ice Age artist to work the face of this panel. Earlier, I noted that the current walking time between the El Pindal cave and Chindoki is about 55 hours. There's a lot of cave wall space much closer to Chindoki than a 55-hour walk. This cave panel irregularity is in the vein of what Picasso observed when coming to the conclusion that man discovered images in the world around him, almost formed already within his grasp. This appears to be something beyond what Picasso had described. Pareidolia outside of the cave is being projected onto the wall in the cave where there is a natural irregularity in the rock. When we widen our view of the panel, the head of an unusual character emerges from behind the elephant. The character comes from over and behind the mountain and elephant. A green arrow marks the right side of its head. The flow of this representation that may be snaking through the red dashes area painted by the Ice Age artist as indicated by the blue arrows. This character has the impression of the wind and may extend to the peak of the depicted mountain. The wind-like character is not part of the mountain. I believe that this character is a representation of the vast spirit Ode, who is the spirit of thunder and the personification of storm clouds. Ode is an agent of Mary. This weather spirit appears to be emerging from the side of Mary's cave. Note that Mary is associated with gold, such as we find in this image. The straight-tusked elephant may be another Basque mythological character. In Basque tradition, Mary transforms into other characters, such as the shapeshifter red bovine they call Oxte, to do her bidding. Oxte is believed to be a cave-dwelling spirit. When the elephants and the woolly mammoths left Europe and the Ice Age, after the Ice Age, the Basques may have substituted the horned bovine for the tusked elephant. They may both be bulls, just not bulls of the same species. In this case, we have a red-spotted elephant, reinforcing the Basque connection. Some researchers suggest that the Basques were descendants of Neolithic farmers who merged with the Mesolithic hunter inhabitants of the region. We appear to be viewing a cave panel representing a mountain with a uniquely Basque name, and mythical characters are the same, with no other known language group connections. One could take the next step to consider that some current Basque names of mountains and mythical characters depicted on upper Paleolithic cave panels may be the same as those spoken by the Mesolithic peoples they met, if not by the upper Paleolithic cave artists before them. This concept will be presented in another study with more Basque mountains. Hang on. Okay. The gold-colored natural irregularity extends from above the Chindoki elephant, as indicated by the blue arrow, and there's the impression of a second and larger elephant above it. Such an elephant would be partly above the mountain. Ice Age people were known to handle elephant remains, such as teeth, but we don't find their bones on the standard menu. The most commonly depicted animals in Ice Age cave art were not those that these people regularly consumed. The principal panel is wild to say the least. There are more lines and curved surfaces to explore and possibly connections to be made. Now let's turn our attention to another upper Paleolithic cave. We traveled from Chindoki to the Las Monedas cave in Cantabria, Spain. Las Monedas is in the El Castillo mountain that has a cave of the same name, among others. The current walking time between Chindoki and the Las Monedas cave is about 44 hours. In the Las Monedas cave, there's the panel of mass that appears to be as enigmatic as the El Pindal principal panel. On the panel of mass, we find the Pareidolia elephant character visualized on Chindoki, and both are the same as depicted at the El Pindal cave. The peak of the smaller elephant's head is marked by the red arrows, and the blue arrow indicates the head of the larger elephant in shadow. The smaller elephant had previously been identified as a mammoth. We also find the wind character Ode, who comes from behind the mountain. There is also a therianthrope, the mix of human and another animal being, in the center. He has foxish ears and peers through a magical mask. One might consider his ears to be elven in today's mythological vernacular. A second mask facing down is to the viewer's far right. This panel was previously titled the panel of mask based on the mask in the center and the impression of mask surrounding the surrounding dark lines. The Ode and fox's-eared character appear to be new finds. Had these spiritual characters been refound in modern times but were too controversial to discuss? Or was the data to more fully analyze these images not previously available? I sometimes scratch my head with these questions. Here we have a too closely cropped black and white photograph and what appears to be a drawing from the same in a 1972 Las Monedas cave study. This is where the interpretation ended. The interpretations of most Iberian Paleolithic images were made decades before 1972. We have much more visual information to work with, utilizing today's photographic technology and techniques. Those dark lines of Ode's outstretched right arm are flora, such as winged broom, marked by the red arrows, a large brown maple leaf, as indicated by the blue arrows, and a scattering of Spanish junipers that are blowing in the wind. One can get a sense of a gust of air animating the flora. This panel has the appearance of a late summer scene, perhaps in the evening or just before sunrise, when the colors of the flora cannot be seen. We have now established collaborative links between the Basque characters depicted on the walls of two Paleolithic caves and a still sacred mountain in the region. In continuing our investigation of the mountain pareidolia cave art hypothesis, we journey to Pica Panamera, that is in Asturias, Spain. Pica Panamera is a fairly low mountain at 763 meters, but has a lot of character. Regional mountaineers refer to this peak as the Little Matterhorn, based on similar geometry with the Matterhorn of the Alps. There is a rounded hill to the viewer's left, known as Pendendo. The photo of Pico Panera in the previous image, as marked here with the red arrow, was taken near to alleys, indicated by the yellow arrow. The photographer had an easterly view of Pica Panamera. We may now learn more about how Ice Age people viewed Pico Panamera at the Las Chimeneas cave in Monte El Castillo. That is about a 14-hour walk. Pica Panamera has some resemblance to a panel in the Hall of Paintings at Las Chimeneas cave. I've taken the liberty to name the scene the panel of the bears. In the absence of any known name, can you see the bears? Our eyes may have been initially drawn to the strong black lines on the panel, but if we pull our gaze away from them, an unhappy mother bear with at least one cub on her head emerges in relief. The mother bear's forelegs are stationary. She appears to be searching for something. Below the she-bear is an alpine cove, a bird common in the region, which looks up to her. This may be a scene in a myth. The bears and dark lines appear to resemble Pica Panamera and the lower Pendendo in the foreground. The she-bear has a touch of white on her muzzle, which may represent snow and the white of the mountain. We can see a stronger resemblance with this close-up shot of the mountain, even features for the bear cub blob on her head. Yet the Las Chimeneas she-bear seems to be coming out of the mountain as if she was part of the geological formation and the sky at the same time. We return to this concept later. We may be able to find more answers to this arrangement of bears and mountains through these two panels in the Las Monedas cave and Cueva de Venta del Perro. Both are a long 2 days walk from Pica Panamera. I've also named each of these the panel of the bears in the absence of other known names. Can you count the bears? We find a mother bear, again, with at least one cub below her. She appears to be protectively pushing back hyenas that have their teeth clamping down on something. Strong dark lines are in front and behind her. Let's take a closer look at the head of the mother bear, whose muzzle can be found with the blue arrow. She has a touch of white on her muzzle, which may represent the snow theme and the white section on the mountain, as we found with the Las Chimeneas mother bear. See her clawed and raised right paw on the back of a hyena, indicated by the red arrow and the tucked under left paw with the yellow. He's protecting a curled up cub. The cub can be identified by its left ear as marked by the red arrow and right front paw, indicated by the yellow arrow. The ear of this cub had been previously documented to be that of the sole bear in the panel, and which drew me to examine the image more closely. The arm of a second cub may be in the jaws of a hyena, as marked with the blue arrows. Through advances in digital photography, we now have a view of these cave panels that has come a long way from lanterns and sketch pads. Let's take a closer look at the pack of hungry hyenas. The black line represents their raised dorsal hairs. One hyena appears to be pulling at the second bear cub. You can see a hyena's right ear and below it black pupils and white eyes, as marked by the red arrow. The gnashing teeth engraved in brown and white are indicated by the yellow arrow. This is a dramatic scene that one could visualize in a ceremonial reenactment. The she-bear's emergence from Pico Panamera and the hyenas are formed from the low hill Pendendo. The dark lines shape the mountains as we found in Las Chimeneas. The mountains would appear to be living from an animistic perspective. We found our mother bear again at Cueva de Vento de Pera in a similar posture to the Las Chimeneas bear. She has two identifiable bear cubs on her back in this image. The she-bear's muzzle has a touch of white to represent snow and perhaps the white face of the mountain. The cub facing to the viewer's left was identified during the first modern investigation of the cave in 1904. My illustrated mother bear and other cub facing the opposite direction appear to have been clumped into the earlier observed bear cub. We do not see the strong black lines with Pico Panamera and Pendendo as we did with the Las Chimeneas and Las Monedas bear panels. Still, there's a natural regularity on the cave walls marked with the red arrow that resembles the top section of Pico Panamera, with the bear's head sticking out as indicated by the yellow arrow. There are objects in the mother bear's mouth. To the viewer's lower right are the open ends of two different bones from unknown animals, as marked with the blue and yellow arrows. The bone in yellow is a broken foreleg condyles or condyles. The frozen head of a different animal, the European wolverine, is indicated by the red arrow. Out of the right side of her muzzle is a brown material that I haven't identified. She appears to have scooped up these frozen foods, reinforcing the seasonality to be winter. Bears maintain a prominent place in Basque culture. There's an ethnographical record among the Basques that they once believed to be descended from bears. The Basque tradition is a fundamental animistic belief that predates Christianity and was not likely originated by Neolithic agricultural peoples either. This belief could be the remnant of an Upper Paleolithic myth that the Basque observed in deep caves and or was passed down by Mesolithic peoples. A standing bear has many human-like physical characteristics. We once competed for the same food resources, and the she-bear greatly cares for her young, such that we today still archetypally use the term mother bear about protective human mothers. From a spiritual standpoint, the bear also has seasons in its life history strategy, whereby this animal hibernates in a winter cave, thus symbolically enters the cave world or cave underworld, and then emerges or is reborn in the late winter or early spring. These cave panel scenes are of protective mother bears in the light snow that have emerged from a cave in late winter. When studying photographs of mountains in northern Spain, I observed many mountains that have elephant-like features, such as found projected onto the walls of El Pendal and Las Monedas. Both the El Pendal and Las Monedas elephants also appear to have large elephants above them, which we don't see in Chindoki. I can see where the artists found their bear inspirations after comparing the cave images to Pico Panamera. This close-up of the Pico Panamera has the look of a bear's muzzle. Other mountains in the region could have the look of bears, although I haven't seen them. I believe that the answer is not just in the pareidolia found in the mountains, but also their relative positions to the night sky during the depicted season. Note that the cave artists would have been looking easterly at Pico Panamera during late winter. Water break. If you have seen my other presentations, you may be following my Agatha Christie-like clues. The eastward bear was a less subtle clue, or the rising eastern bear. This slide begins where we walk through the whodunit of astronomy. In this image generated by Starry Night Pro 8, a software package utilized by professional astronomers and planetariums, we can dial back the clock and look easterly at Pico Panera to see what the cave artists would have viewed in that time and place. See how the she-bear, Ursa Major, as marked by the red arrow, would have been viewed meeting the dawn. We see the she-bear here pictured as the ancient Greeks found her form. Maybe the Ice Age artist illustrated her lines differently. Remember the same depicted direction that the bears face on the 3 cave panels. What if the mother bear was drawn in reverse by the Ice Age cave artists during late winter? Indigenous peoples around the world animate the stars of Ursa Major in different forms as the she-bear travels through the seasons. The heads of both the Las Chimeneas and Cueva de Ventavirapera mother bears would fit neatly between the currently depicted Ursa Major tail and her right hind leg. The forward arm of the Las Monedas mother bear could have been represented by the long tail of Ursa Major. I should note that bears don't have long tails, which has been a curiosity among ancient and modern astronomers for the stars in Ursa Major. The constellations also appear to move from left to right across the night sky. The reason why the mother bears in Las Monedas, and Venta de la Pera caves appear to be frozen in time and in Pico Panera may be because they couldn't move any further to the viewer's left in the night sky. The heads of the mother bears are also depicted at slightly different positions to the parent horizon. These pictorial differences may be due to astronomical observations over thousands of years that these cave images were made, which would place the constellation of Ursa Major at slightly different positions relative to the horizon. This astronomical phenomenon is called precession, whereby the Earth wobbles like a top over a 25,700-year cycle and changes our views of the stars relative to the horizon. We were once deeply connected to Mother Bear, as she not only reminded us of good child rearing, but also helped us to find our place in time and space. Had she perished in the terrestrial realm, would her reflection in the night sky have disappeared as well? If Mother Bear didn't awake in the spring, would other life not be born? Perhaps our destinies would have once appeared to be inseparable. Any pre-human arrival of bear remains in caves would have been evidence to Ice Age peoples that these co-animal beings were there first. Some cave walls had earlier scratches from bears, perhaps suggesting that they were prior artists. Bears continued to claw surfaces to mark their territories, as these Ice Age peoples would have been aware of. I can see how such evidence around the early Iberian humans and these images could have developed an origin story of how they, or should we say we, came to be descended from bears, as found in Basque tradition. In other presentations here at AM Byte, we explored the idea of constellations for Orignacian peoples from about 34,000 years ago at the El Castillo cave in northern Spain. This cave is in the same mountain as the Las Chimeneas and Las Monedas caves. I found that many of the Greek constellations, including Ursa Major as a she-bear, were known to the Upper Paleolithic and were obviously an earlier source. 10 identifiable Greek constellations in the correct order, in addition to these depicted 5, were known. These constellations of stars we continue to steal from the night sky as the greatest show people of our time. They are never enough. We also look to the elephants depicted on the walls of the Las Monedas and El Pindao cave to test if this astronomical perspective continued on. Using Starry Night Pro 8 again, although this time with a westerly view, we look back at how the cave artists would have seen Chindoki in their time and place. See the prominent stars that frame the horns of Taurus, as the ancient Greeks depicted the constellation. The depicted horns of Taurus closely resemble the hind legs and trunk paradoia of the elephant in Chindoki, as the mountain would have been viewed merging with the dawn. Or did the Ice Age artists see an elephant in the mountain Chindoki whose peaks of their heads on the cave panels are marked by the red arrows, with the largest shadow of the elephants as indicated by the green arrows in the constellation Taurus as part of the same vision? In either case, the vision of an elephant in Chindoki and Taurus was an Ice Age marker of time and space, and perhaps an indicator of changes in the weather as found in Basque tradition. Taurus was known as an elephant among Aurignacian peoples around 34,000 years ago in northern Spain, as shown here with this previously introduced slide. Some of these constellations, as we envision them, were known almost 20,000 years ago before the first replicas of Chindoki and Pico Panamera. On our travels across time and space, we found mountains that had the look of and were on the directionally correct horizons as some of these constellations. The mountains are living, not just in the terrestrial realm, but in the sky world as well. One can imagine how magical these meetings of the realms would have been to Ice Age peoples, so magical that the cave artists then projected the view onto their underworld of the cave walls to complete the transcendental experience and perhaps spiritually continue the yearly cycle of life. Remember the Fox's ears therianthrope in the Las Moneos cave, who peers through the magical mask at the wonders of his cosmos. This character is likely an initiate on his journey of discovery, whom we have become by looking through his magical mask. Here, in the psychological interpretation, where the sacred and the scientific are one, where we encounter the cosmos through the Paleolithic mind that is still our own. Thank you again for having me on the program, Miguel, and we have lots to talk about with you in advance. For the audience, more of my work can be found on my webpage, beforeorion.com, and you can find me with Before Orion across all the social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Academia EDU, Reddit, Tumblr, Pinterest, and so on. So I'm out there, and now would be a good time to switch us over so that everybody can see each other at a presentation mode. Well, I'll just do
There
something
you
here.
go. There you go. Wonderful. Thank you for that. As always, very engaging stuff. The bare necessities. Somebody's got to say a pin. Somebody's got to do a pun. So yeah, great stuff. And for the audience, some of you, of course, are going to get this audio version. Check out the video version. I should say that some of you have told me, yeah, you're not going to go on YouTube. Some of you will not go on Facebook. You don't want to go into the major CIA-backed brands. But you can always, if you want visual, you can go to Odyssey, which will be on it. I also uploaded to Rockfin. Rockfin is actually very popular. I have almost 9,000 followers there and is doing well until the crypto crash. But there's a lot of follow. You can get the show on Rockfin too or Odyssey. If again, we try to put the show on as many versions and channels because I know everybody has different tastes. Everybody has different rejections of different platforms, and that's fine. This is 2022, so. Well, awesome. I have a few questions, but I want to see what Vance has to say, what his takeaway, or we have questions for the audience. Or Vance, do you have any of your own questions?
Yeah. Let's get some basic questions. Is the idea that these Neolithic people went into the caves and saw these images in the natural formations of the rocks and then accented them with their own painting to make the figures come out? Is that how it happened, or tell us how it happened?
Sure. So all these images were created by what we call Upper Paleolithic peoples. So 12,000 to 28 for the bears and the elephants, and the previous El Castillo stuff that I showed was 34,000 years ago. So the Neolithic people didn't make cave art. 12,000 years ago, Neolithic people show up, or there, I should say, and they did not make cave art. It was not a tradition that was carried on. So the question then becomes, how do the Basque, what's the Basque connection? Because the Basque, they have the same mythology with the same cave images. Okay. And the Basque are a unique people that they're in this corner or they're in the Pyrenees, in this corners of Spain and France currently. And no one really knows where the Basque come from. The Basque don't actually know where they come from. And the question could be, were the Basque always there? And they have a unique language that, as far as the Basque linguists are concerned, has no connection to any other languages. Okay. Now there's Armenians. Armenians believe that some of their words are connected to Basque words. Okay. And the words that they have would be like very like pre-farming or farming type of words. Okay. And what the Armenians say is that the Neolithic revolution moved, kind of back to your question, moved from post Göbekli Tepe west into Basque country, and that the Armenians gave the Basque basically all their stuff. Okay, that's what the Armenians say. And when we talk about Armenia, we're really talking about Greater Turkey, because it's the Armenian plateau, which also includes where Göbekli Tepe and all the tepes are. Okay, so the Armenians say that this all happened 8,000 years ago, that everything flushed from the east to the west, lands in the Basque country. But everything we have here is between 12 and 28,000 years ago, and then plus the El Castillo images. So it's not possible that it all happened a long time before 8,000 years ago. So it's completely impossible that the Armenians, that the Armenian tradition, including Göbekli Tepe, we're going to say, because they say it's Göbekli Tepe too, all that stuff landed in the Basque country. What's more likely, it's pretty obvious based on the dates, is that this was an Upper Paleolithic tradition that people, that the cave artists either told the Mesolithic and Neolithic peoples, or the Basque were the cave artists. Those are the, or the Basque went into the caves in the last thousands of years. They saw the images and came out with a new mythology. My bet is that the cave artists are Basque. That would be the most logical solution to it, and that would also explain why cave or rock art emerges in the Sahara and Göbekli Tepe at the same time it ends in Spain.
Well, by the way, aren't the Basques and the people that are known as the quote unquote gypsies isn't there a connection there? The Romani.
Yeah, so the Rome. Yeah, we used to call them gypsies. We don't say that anymore.
Right. Because
that
that comes from Egyptian.
People were gypped, and we do not talk about that anymore. So they call them the Romans or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Romanes.
Cheryl's gonna have to change her song though.
Yeah,
Roma,
I don't.
Tramps and Thieves.
Yeah. So I have no knowledge of that. I thought they were the Romanese like in Hungary or something, but you guys can Google that one.
Oh, they're nomadic, right? They were all over Europe.
Yeah, so that's that's an unknown to me, but that's also a more modern phenomenon.
Well, they maybe go back. They're legends that they go back to Egypt, which is where
of course
gypsy,
they say
right?
that was and that was in the whole shell game sort of stuff, and where they get their ancient wisdom from, and yeah. So I'm not a Roman. Yeah, I'm not a
fan.
They're in this in the train of thought that I'm heading. So here's a question for you guys. When you looked at the images before that I pointed out the bears, did you see the bears?
A little bit. It was hard. I think if the images were larger, like if you notice at the end, it was too late. I didn't know your presentation was about to end. I had enlarged and made it just the presentation. Yeah. The pictures are small compared to the entire slide. Yeah. So it's that's one thing, and it's kind of hard. Now the drawings help.
Well, yeah. Oh, darn right they do.
Yeah. And I could see. I could see
didn't
the
see
features.
them at first. They didn't jump out to me either, because I was sort of following the archaeological company line of, this is, they're called nondescript. They were called in the archaeology books. They're called nondescriptive drawings. Means that there's lines there. Nobody knew what the lines were. And what drew me to all these was that I looked through the books for the nondescriptive descriptive drawings, and I sat back and I looked a little bit, and I have so we have 5. We did 5 images today. I've got another 15.
Wow.
And most of them, they're different animals, but they're sets of 2 to 4, or groups of 2 to 4. So they're multiples, just like we saw at Chindoki. And so you guys learned a new word tonight, Chindoki, right?
Yeah, I'll probably forget it in about an hour.
So here's this. So the Armenian language, they have the TX. They have that TX too, and it's Chin.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the reasons they keep pulling this thing out. Now, Chindoki, I'm not a Basque linguist, but I've asked the right people the right questions. Chin has no meaning in Basque, other than whereas Doki does, and Doki means place, and so it is the place of Chin, which is that mountain, because it wasn't borrowed from anybody else.
So you're saying it's the name of the mountain, and the Chin is the name of the mountain that they had. They gave
the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
So do you think they're do you think that the paintings used to be more clear and they wore off over time, or I don't know what would wear them off?
No, they're so these paintings. So we're going to put these in the category of paintings / engravings, and all the engravings they're pretty. Most of these are actually, there's more engraving than is in painting on these images, and they drew from the natural irregularities. We have based on the photographs you saw, we have really good photographs of these that were taken by Takeo Fukawa a few years ago, and compared to what people had 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, when people literally had lanterns of different sorts and flashing things and deciding what they did or did not want to see. Now, there's a story that I'm not a political person, well, at least not in regards to the Basque, right? I live in Portland, everybody's political, right? The Antifa on the left and Proud Boys on the right, and it's just the whole thing. You cannot live in Portland without having a political opinion. So the Basque have a history, and I can't. If I was on a podcast in Spain right now, we could not have this discussion, because they would say they just cut it off right now. They say, we can't talk about that. Turn off the thing. So the Basque have a history that we know for Guernica. And the history of Guernica is that the General Franco, lost the election. Okay? And he brought in, at first, Berber people from North Africa, troops, to push out the duly elected government. Okay? And the story of the Guernica was the daytime raid from both Franco and the Nazis and Mussolini, where they basically a civilian town, they shot it up, bombed it, the whole thing, and that became Guernica. Okay. Well, that story of Guernica has been going on for at least, the Romans were there a few times, and it means Christians, right? And they tried to kick him out, and they tried to change the religion, couldn't do it. Everybody's been there in this part of the country and tried to convert or reform the Basque and weren't able to do it. So the Basque have kept this identity in their religion and their language, because no one's been able to really do this. And that's the story of Guernica. And the Basque had, people can look it up. It's within the last 10 years, they still had a terrorist type of movement where they're blowing up Central Spanish diplomats.
Basque separatists. Yes.
If anything you know about Basque is they're separatists.
Yeah.
And by being they're the equivalent of Native Americans, except the Native Americans assimilated in, and the Basque also assimilated in, but the Basque kept their own language, with many Native American groups didn't. So we can look at them as an indigenous people. That clearly, they were once a fourth world people, and then they're currently a present world, first world people, because they took in the technology and so on. But they also kept their agricultural, sheep herders and all that sort of stuff. You know that many Basques relocated to the United States?
No, I had no idea where.
Two major areas that I know about. One is outside of Boise, Idaho, and the other is down by Reno.
No moon.
By Reno.
Hmm.
And the Basque. They continue to be sheep and goat herders, and they would drive the sheep up into the hills and little mountains during the summer to get the better feed. And there's tell of a Basque sheep herder. He's up for the whole summer. He has no companionship except for the sheep, and he runs out of his drink, his spirit. And the end of the season, he drives his sheep right through an outlying town, as they still do. Steps into the local bar, walks up and pounds his hand on the table on the bar and says, "Bear."
Oh, you're just
I just
basking
tell,
in
right?
the bass, are you?
But so I'm 99% convinced that the Basques are for certain the cultural descendants of the cave artists. 100% convinced of that one, and 95% convinced that they are in fact the same people. And what did happen is that people came in from the Armenian Plateau, present day Turkey, 8, 9, 10,000 years ago, and they brought in agriculture. But the Basque already had, they were probably herding animals. Either they're herding animals up and down the mountains, or they're following them, which is really the same thing, right? So for tens of thousands of years, people were the ibex were going up and down the hills during the winter and the summer to have the best food and the best temperatures. And the same thing for oryx and horses and everything else. And so I believe that at some point they had a better way of following or managing the herds without having like an ownership of the herds like we have today. I mean, at some point in the past, the agriculturists came in from the Armenian Plateau and brought them, making hay versus hiking up and down the hills to just get the better hay, like the Basque shepherd outside of Boise was doing.
Fascinating. I think we have a question here. It's
Yeah, I
from
saw that.
Graham Pong, who will also be joining us for AB Live at the end of September, Earth, Wind, and Fire. But here's this question. I don't know if you can see it, Bernie, but I'll read it. Are the bears, quote, cave bears? Any relationship with the cave bear shamanism, which the Neanderthal shared 80,000 years ago? Maybe humans continuing and expanding that Neanderthal tradition.
So good question. So first of all, if you might have noticed, those three bears mother bears don't look, there's differences between them. So there were different strains of, there were different strains of bears in the Iberian Peninsula then, just as there are today. So there's the so-called Cantabrian brown bear, and then there's the European brown bear, and they have differences between their cranial skull structures. So these artists are very interesting that we can see three different types of strains of bears. I'm not sure if species is the right word for them. So were they cave bears? So did they live in bears? Probably this. I don't think they spent their entire existence in bears. I think they were walking around, but they did hibernate in the winter. Obviously in these images, you can see where they hibernated in the mountain, right? But during the summer months, they would have walked around, and put out fires and all the things that bears do today in the pictures.
Well, now, with the bears, with the bear images, how can we factor in the different possible skill levels of the artists? Perhaps the artists weren't that accurate in portraying the bears, so the differences in the bears may have been due to that.
Well, yeah. So I can match all three of those bears with different species or strains of varieties of bears today. Super accurate, like right on accurate. And the one you saw, the bear had the European wolverine in its mouth and some other bones. I mean, these people knew their stuff. And when I was like, "Whoa, this is fascinating," and then the other one, the bear's pushing back the hyenas, and you can see the raised dorsal hairs of the hyenas, and which is actually the low pendendo, and so they were very accurate on that basis. Now the viewer asked a few other questions, and one of the questions was, did the Neanderthals have cave? The Neanderthals connected to shamanism 80,000 years ago.
All right.
Okay, so there's many different interpretations of shamanism. I'm calling these people animists. Okay, so in their world, it was brother bear, it was sister eagle, and that the rocks were alive, and we can obviously say the mountains were alive because they saw the animals in the mountains, and in Basque tradition, in mythology, their world, everything emerged from the underworld in the form of mountains. And you can see where that comes from, in that they saw all these pareidotic characters in the mountains that were in fact in their real world and their terrestrial world and in the night sky at the same time. And then they refound them in the underworld. Okay. So I use animism for these things, and people, when people use the word shamanism, there's a big basket of shamanism. Okay, and people pull out what they want and put things in they want, and so I stay away from. That's not a word that I use because it implies things like ayahuasca in South America, right? And people think, Mother Ayahuasca is flying around the world to all the shamans and giving them the good news, whereas you have to get on an airplane to fly to get ayahuasca, as someone we know is going to do legally. So I don't use that word shaman. Now, the other word is the Neanderthals. So there is no evidence that Neanderthals made art. 0, 0, 0 evidence. And so we have no record of Neanderthals having such a connection to bears. Okay. So Neanderthals, I'm sure they went into caves where there were bears present, where bears had slaughtered, that died, had fought, that had, played with hyenas or something. But we have no evidence that, there's no pictorial connection as we do with these images. And the images we talked about today were 12 to 28,000 years ago. Same tradition, and that same tradition also connected to what I'd previously done for 34,000 years on the Gallery of Dis in the El Castillo cave. So this is not something that was invented, 12,000 years ago, or even 20. It was invented before 34,000 years ago. It was first projected, and so I would say these people are animists, and that they're not connected to Neanderthals. Although there's a lot of work being done on Neanderthals, and I'm looking for over time what we find that is solid, verifiable, but we haven't seen that yet outside of Clan and the Cave Bear and that sort of stuff. We're waiting. Yeah.
With bated breath, we are indeed. And hyenas. I'm surprised. So there were hyenas in that region.
Yeah, there were hyenas.
I've always wanted two pets that I would love to have, but with my dogs, I've always wanted a pet pig, just like Nicolas Cage in the movie in Portland, Pig, and a pet hyena. I think they're extremely intelligent animals. They're not canines. I didn't know that. They're like their own species, but yeah, hyenas were hanging around in Spain, huh?
Yeah. So hyenas
round ears.
Yeah, hyenas tie back into the Neanderthal question as well, because there's been this proposal that Neanderthals buried their dead, because you find a lot of Neanderthals buried in the same place. And the argument against that is, well, all these Neanderthals have hyena, gnashed bones and stuff. And so that the more scientifically solid conclusion is that the hyenas drag them into their caves.
Oh.
Whereas the Neanderthals didn't bury their own in their caves. The hyenas brought them in there after they died or killed them or something. Or
really?
Don't want to think about that. Yeah.
So the Neanderthals were really Neanderthals. Dumb.
Yeah. They had some tough times with hyenas.
That's for sure. Yeah, well, the hyenas are extremely intelligent animals. I mean, one of the myths you want to get rid of is you always think the lions are the king of the jungle. No,
Mhm.
it's the hyenas. Most, I think, 70% of the what lions eat, they steal or what's left over from the hyenas. I mean, the hyenas are just they have a complex set of communication. They're just very smart animals. Lions
Yeah.
just kind of took over.
And they have a pretty good job of know how to steal bear cubs in the winter,
Oh, yeah,
as
yeah,
we saw in
they're
the images, right? These
yeah,
are
they're
traumatic
smart.
scenes.
Yeah.
This is, I'm not sure we're going to rate this program, but this is the law of the wild.
Yeah. So you think maybe when this guy was drawing the bear, it wasn't like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when he's reading the monster and he's like, and he turns they turn around as a
Yeah,
monster. That would be funny, but
yeah. So these are pretty powerful images,
mhm,
and this you have a lot of Jungians in the audience that it's archetypal. The protective mother bear that we still use today, or people are bearish. And of course, the Cub Scouts, you have a den mother, right? We we're There's something inside us that we still have this animistic connection that we
mhm.
can't escape from. It's who we are.
What about the mountain? What would
So
the mountain be to
so the
the human?
mountain is the well in what the Basques say. Okay, what the Basques say is that everything emerged from the underworld and emerged in the form of mountains. That's what so the Basques know the based on that origin story. The Basques know that Chindoki is projected, expressed in these caves, because they're saying it emerged from this underworld. And the Basque know, the Basque know in the mythology, they've got the whole story. They know Mary's cave is where Mary comes from, and that's the mountain where Mary come. They've got the whole story.
Mhm.
We can question whether or not that is the original story, but that is a pretty darn good interpretation of the images we just saw in two caves for Chindoki, especially that wind spear that comes around is kind of cool, the Ode. And then the one we have, the elven, we would we call it elven today, but it's probably more like foxish ears or something like that. I think that's one of the most powerful images in Upper Paleolithic cave art, because you have this animal, other animal, human being character that's looking through a mask. Now that the mask that he looks through has previously been identified by archaeologists, and they said all that other stuff, all those what I'm calling different flora, they said that was other masks. It's not other masks, because I can identify every one of those flora. But what they didn't, I think they saw the man with the character, the elvish ears behind, because you can't miss it when you look at it, right? You can't. But I think that there's resistance to two things. One is this is like mythology long before Christianity, which is not a good thing in Catholic Spain. And second is that you're putting Basque mythology forward and center when central Spain wants to bring the Basque. They want all the Basques to be Spanish. They don't want them to be Basque, right? They want to pretty much totally eliminate Basque culture, except for the tourist dollars it brings in, or not tourist dollars, but tourists. What's the money?
Euros?
Yeah, but yeah, because everybody's euros these days.
Pesetas,
Yeah,
pesetas back before the
yeah,
years. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, Barcelona and that region is
yeah.
big
And
time.
I'm not anti-Span Central Spain. I mean, this is
Which is
history.
Castilian. Yeah, the original
Yeah,
it was
this is
Castile.
history. This is the
Mhm.
history as it is, and I'm not going to whitewash it either. But I believe that why this isn't expressed as I'm giving it to us, to the audience today, is that these are delicate lines, and for how long did Native Americans not have the ability to speak their own languages? I mean, it's a long time. And how the Native American culture across the United States has been exterminated. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some tradition. They have traditions here and there, but the culture that was around 1850 is gone. Okay. And people have assimilated into the European, now what formerly was European, way of seeing the world. And it's there's what we have left is remnants as opposed to the core systems. And the Basque are the Basques have these remnants as well. But what's interesting is that we can trace their remnants to cave art 12 to 28,000 years ago, direct connections. And that period connects back to the images 34,000 years ago, which are different images. I should say there's overlapping of images, but the 34,000 years ago comes from another place. I don't think we ever did that, did we? We never did the Morocco, did we?
No, we haven't done Morocco. No,
we never did Morocco. Oh, that's another. Oh, yeah, it all goes back to Morocco. 34,000 years ago. I give conference presentations on this stuff. How could I have missed you guys?
Casablanca. You watched Casablanca.
Yeah.
And they came from Egypt and they went to Morocco. No.
Yeah.
Well, they went from Morocco to Egypt, because as the Egypt gained in prominence as the Sahara dried.
Right.
The people from across North Africa moved towards where they went in two directions. One were in the mountains of Morocco, where there's water, and the other direction was to the Nile, more to the Nile, because there's a lot more water. And then the people stayed as, like the Tuareg remained as nomads in the desert. I have a good friend who's Tuareg, and there's not many. I mean, you might be talking 50 in the country or something in the United States. There's not many Tuaregs. There's a lot of Berbers, but there's very few Tuaregs. And his family lives in Niger, in the desert, and they when he goes back he has to take an airplane, he has to take a jeep, and then he has to take a camel to go find them. And he doesn't actually know where they are because they're nomadic peoples. No. So he goes around the camel to try to figure out what was the last known place and ask where they went to. And the Tuareg in today's Tuareg, they're third, fourth world people. They're like Native Americans were in the past. They're
homeless, right? They're homeless.
They're not homeless. They carry the homeless with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like tents.
But no country adopts. They're not.
So no, yeah, exactly. No, yeah. The Tuareg will walk on foot over 1,000 miles per year. So when people talk about, how did something get from, Iberian Peninsula to Turkey over 5,000 years, which is, it's a few thousand miles. The Tuareg walk over 1,000 miles a year on foot. So I don't see this dispersion of things happening in over many thousands of years as being such a big trick, because we see it happens today.
And they were stronger. I mean, the science is saying we are very sedentary. I don't know how to pronounce it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sedentary. Yeah.
Sedentary. But ancient man was far stronger, faster, and everything. I mean, you can just open. In Roman times, your average Roman legionnaire had to carry his weight for 10 miles. You can have a football player or The Rock or anybody do that today, carry your own body weight that long. So, yeah, and they traveled, they were faster, simply because if they weren't sleeping, they were on the run, except for the cave guy painting his stuff. But so yeah, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are... we're just more efficient at it now. We can communicate across the podcast waves.
Yeah, but our architecture has also turned to shit, and our design
that's
and our
true.
art. We've lost it.
Not.
Yeah. So
deconstructionalism.
Yeah. And Bernie, have you been there to the?
No, I haven't. No, and it's actually okay, because people should be using the photographs taken by like Takeo Fukawa. People should not be. It's good that people visit caves, but it's not good that people make their interpretations based on what they visit in the cave, because nobody else can see the same thing. So there has to be a standard format that everybody looks at the same image, high quality images, and that's a pretty in the past, people had lanterns and doing all this stuff, and they walked away with their interpretation. That then became the law, but we're beyond that now.
We need a hologram, we need a hologram so that you can see the different aspects of it, because that would probably, I don't know if you've been to certain types of these caves, if you can even move your head a little bit, the parallax effect can actually bring out the three-dimensional features, because photographs flatten things out.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. So the answer is, you're right about that. What Takeo Fukawa does is, he actually, it's flattened out, but his style of photography is to keep the shapes. That's like what he does. In fact, some of the images are taken on a track, so that you're seeing multiple perspectives at the same time.
Yeah, we're stereoscopic, like Viewmaster. That would be cool.
Yeah, he has for these images that I've shown, he has like a Viewmaster kind of device that you can see them in greater 3D.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's really important. But what mostly happens is people see things in shadows, and they form an impression based on the shadow. All the interpretations we looked at tonight were based on actual engravings in the rock, natural irregularities in the rock, and paint that was put on the rock. No shadows came into this interpretation.
Okay.
Whereas that's what we have when we go into caves and we look in, or you look in your closet, right, and shine a flashlight at night, and you're gonna see lots of demons jumping out, whatever's in your head. And that's but that's what people did prior to photos like his, and it's not good science, and it's not reproducible. So everything we saw today was reproducible because it was done by Fukawa.
Yeah, lighting is critical when you're doing that.
Yeah, he has multiple points of lighting. So these images were from 1 to 2 meters across.
They fuse flood lighting, to eliminate the shadows. Lighting.
And the one, the Gallery of Disc one, which 34,000 years ago, that's 10 meters across. This is pretty. This is highly technical photography. And what's happened now is, so I'm not the only one who's seen. I was not the first one to see these things. I'm completely convinced of it. The Bass guy must have seen it, right? But then what happens is what people saw in the past holding a lantern, then became the truth and the standard, and it's in the journals, and then people are afraid to challenge that because they're challenged somebody who's the saint of El Castillo or something, whoever, Saint Archeologist of El Castillo.
Are these Basque people that call themselves experts, or can you get a Basque guide that'll pick you up there and knows what they are?
I'm talking the anthropology, archaeology world. So people are actually studying these things. People are afraid to challenge the written past. But I'm not afraid of it. I have nothing to. I actually have nothing to gain or to lose. And so people don't like to challenge authority, and you don't get very far in the social sciences if you challenge authority.
It's where the funding and all that other stuff, and the ridicule, all that stuff.
And that doesn't. So people they kind of they turn an eye to stuff, and that's just but what's last time I was on the program, someone asked the question is where's the mainstream on this, right? And my response was, well, it's either I've made this whole thing up, and in that case, I'm a Picasso, right? I'm a closet Picasso, which whatever. But since this work has come out, have we? There's there's a fleet of buses full, on board. So there's you say, is anybody in the bus? Yeah, there's a fleet of buses on board. And on the end of there's very few people on the end of the spectrum. and they're in the position of, Luke, and Darth Vader, when Darth Vader tells him, "I'm your father," and Luke is like, "No, no, no, no." I feel for people, but it's if you don't get on the bus, doesn't matter to me.
Well, you would
'Cause-
think that the Basque would not be, beholden to all the establishment authorities, because if it's their heritage, I mean, do the Basque recognize that these creations, these
So this
artistic
work came.
creations,
I
are
first
theirs?
released this work at a conference about 2 months ago, and I released it in. I had it. All these presentations. There are four of them. This presentation, English, Spanish, Basque, and French. Okay, and I put in Spanish and Basque. So all the slides are translated into Spanish and Basque. Okay, I released it in that so that I could actually reach those audiences.
Yeah.
And most of them are reading it in Spanish, because I can see the higher, views on the Spanish ones,
Okay.
right? Not many on the Basque ones. But 48 people read it in Basque, so someone's reading in Basque. So what is the Basque opinion on this one so far? I don't know, because no one's actually given me. The Basque world has given me that feedback yet. But my guess is there's lots of Basque people who are sitting around in circles and deciding, what do we do with this? Because we're only talking, it's only been 2 months since this has been released.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe even less time than that.
Okay. It's early.
Yeah, so we're this is on the to reach that audience. It's real soon. But among the, let's say, prehistorians, anthropologists, archaeologists who work in this area, they see it. I mean, it's out there. There's nobody's. I mean, unless you got your head in the ground, you've seen it. Because it's all in the. It was released in the conference in Spain. It's been on all the different media that everybody sees. And some people are like, wow, it's incredible. Some people, this is cool. But there's a fleet of buses now that'll flow. It's,
You should have you need to have the Basque see Bigfoot in those mountains. Then everything will come
Well, the
together.
Basque have their version of it. And
really?
And so it actually, I don't remember the name. It starts with a G. And it's a one-eyed man. Okay. And so this is what I will say is that in the gallery of discs, the 34,000 years ago that I've done on this program, all of my webpage, there's what I call this cosmic man. And the cosmic man holds an egg, and he's half bird, half man. Okay. And he's missing one eye. And I believe that became the origin of Odin, the man who gives up an eye to see.
Oh, yeah.
And both this cosmic man and Odin are associated with birds, and the cosmic man is associated with an eagle, a golden eagle, and Odin has birds flying around them. So Odin gives up his eye to see, but it's because the birds do the seeing for him. Okay. So I think that the Basque had seen the same character, and they walked away with a one-eyed man, one-eyed giant, not a giant. And this cosmic man character in gallery disc is huge, so that he effectively became a Bigfoot, but he's not a Bigfoot, okay? And as I've said in the past,
what was he holding? We have a question
an egg.
from the audience.
He's holding
an egg.
Dr.
Like
Joanna,
Mary Magdalene, Joanna.
Yeah, he's holding an egg
for breakfast. No, it must be. It's a
That's
cosmic
his kid.
symbol of.
actually,
salt.
so he's holding egg, and
his kid.
yes,
Junior.
and it's not an egg of a bird. It's an egg of the crocodile.
Oh.
It's an egg of the crocodile. And it goes back to the Hercules myth of Hercules steals the apple from Latin, the dragon, which then became the crocodile in this mythology. So yes, one eye carrying eggs. It's a penis. One eye carrying. Yeah, actually clever. Yeah, that's a clever one.
Yeah.
That was a clever one. Nephilim. Yes, Dr. Joanna Kujawa, spiritual detective. Nephilim. I know nothing about. Nephilim. It's actually Nephilim. I know nothing about Nephilims. So somebody will have to. I need to drama. But this is what I will say, is that many of these ancient myths, from Mediterranean myths, and in Northern Europe, come from these upper Paleolithic cave images. And that they go back so far in time, and that people revisited them at different points in their cultures, and they walked away. They saw the archetypal characters, and they said this person's a hero and this person's a villain, but they gave them different names, and then they put them on different sets and different stages. But they're the same archetypal characters that we can go back and see them in these original images. And even the Basque, actually, not the Basque, I say, the Upper Paleolithic people 12 to 28,000 years ago, they saw the gallery of discs and these other images from 34,000 years ago. And they took what was important to them that they could reproduce in the mountains in their world. And the protective mother bear's slam dunk. I mean, how do we miss that one, right?
And then the fox mask, that could be the trickster archetype, which is important.
Yeah. So so the answer is yes, and I've been looking for a Basque myth that includes that. Now there was a Basque mythologist / archaeologist, and he died, I believe, like it was the 1960s or so. And he was he did really our remaining mythological work from the Basque, and he separated from the Catholic Church when he did it, which meant he also separated from the Franco government. Okay. And he went into exile during that time period of Guernica, effectively, and came out of it many years later to run a university in Spain. And what we have from him are these original Basque myths as he received them from others. Now, he was also I've read his work, and he uses a lot of the same word of Mircea Eliade, who wrote the book, the World Religions and the collection of so-called shamanism around the world, of the different shamanistic people around the world, shamanistic people. And so I'm not sure, he used the sacred and the profane. I'm not sure if Eliade got it from the Spanish mythologist or vice versa. So I haven't actually figured out the dates of the two, but it's, so we have early back in time. And then the Spanish mythologist, whose name I can't remember, I apologize, he's using young type of stuff. And so were these people at the same conferences? Were they borrowing from each other? Because they're using the same words. I mean, they use even like archetype. So we have a Spanish priest who separated from the Catholic Church, separated from the Franco government, and went to exile, came out. And what we have from him is information about 1900, 1920, which is roughly the same time information we have about Native Americans. That's when the anthropologists went into that, Native Americans, and recovered what they could. And we have the same thing from the Basque. So and he's like this priest is a martyr among the Basques, or I not say martyr. He's equivalent of Basque saint.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Well, we hope we can find out more. Well, I think we probably are at the end and probably should wrap it up. The audio version should be out tomorrow. Obviously, the YouTube, Rockfin, and Odyssey will be out tonight. So please, I'll have information on Bernie in the show notes. Please check out his channel. Check out his other presentation. His past interviews on Aeon Byte have been very interesting, and it really gives you so many insights into human nature of the past and all this wonderful stuff that can help us in the present and the future. And I appreciate those of you on the chat. Good questions, good remarks, funny things. You guys are great. But we are at the end. First, I'll say, Vance, in your smaller size, you still did a great job. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get that fixed. So thank you very much, Bernie. Good to see you again. Keep up the good work. You get all those little spiritual puzzle pieces and the mythology going there. That's where the art ties in. I just saw a website, by the way, searched on the Basque, and they had a lot of the different Basque mythology characters and so forth.
It all comes from that Spanish priest. He's the source.
Wow.
All comes from the same
one
person.
guy. Yep. Well, we got to get more of those Basque come up with those legends. Yep. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Bernie, as always, it's always fun having you on, and keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, we always look forward to your research and insights. And don't run into any cave bear or hyenas while you're out there. And if you do, draw them before you die. Make sure you do that. So, well, all right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Please have a good rest of your week, and we shall see you sooner rather than later. And as I always say, write your own gospel, live your own myth. You're amazing. Good night, everyone.